Hi, so I was going to talk about this in this week's WoW Flash, but it was pretty much the only news item. Still been a slow week. Hopefully we'll get back on with that next week. So this is about faction imbalance, and the big news, the very expected news, we sort of knew this was coming, was Scrubbusters changing to Horde. So Scrubbusters, basically the banner bearer of Alliance for, well, quite a while now, have decided that they're not going to be able to be as competitive as they'd like to be as Alliance. And there's two sides to this, but the main side, I'm going to read out their statement. I did ask Takeshi, who's one of the officers in Scrubbusters, when it was sort of being said, but before the statement. And I said, okay, is this to do with recruitment or is this to do with racials? Because there is this huge split between Horde and Alliance guilds in terms of especially mythic raiding, but as you move further down, that split's still there. And the Horde versus Alliance split is there for a very long way down. You have to get to super, and I mean super casual sort of playstyle before it doesn't seem to make much of a difference. And there's a couple of reasons for this. Obviously, there has been at one time a perception that the Horde racials are stronger for PvE. Now, I did a video a while ago just looking at this, doing some sims and saying, is there actually anything there? There was a little bit for Horde, a little bit. It wasn't actually that pronounced, but then the perception sort of feeds in. And then when you get to a certain point when there's so many Horde players, there's so many Horde guilds, another thing comes in, and this is what Scrubbusters said. And I'm going to read the statement out first of all and then sort of add my commentary onto it. So what they've said is, our 8-year-old guild story. The raiding community has always been a dying breed, especially the Alliance community. Whenever you talk about hardcore raiding, you associate it with Horde. That has always been the case, partly because of stronger racials, but also because there just always was a bigger and established community on the Horde side. In the past, this didn't affect us as much as a guild, as we've been at the top of the Alliance community for several expansions. If you wanted to stay Alliance and raid at the top, you'd usually end up at us. Of course, if you were playing on an EU server and could speak English. This was a system that worked very well for our guild for years, but with Legion's unrealistic demands on players and the decline of raiding guilds, we really felt it, as we not only had fewer applicants, I'll change the grammar there, but we've had players state that they don't want to leave their friends behind to play Alliance, and that's understandable. Over the years, people have made connections and friends, and that's not something you'd easily give up in order to play a different faction. Especially in today's hardcore raiding community, very few English-speaking Alliance guilds exist. Why would you play in an underrepresented faction if you could join an equal guild in the faction all your friends are in? These factors put together, and it brings us to where we are now, as we're in the process of changing our alignments from the late Varian Rin, now Anduin. Anduin's a sad panda at the moment.
What am I supposed to do now?
To Lady Sylvanas Windrunner. That's right, Scrubbusters is changing the Horde from now onwards. If the faction barrier ever stops you from contacting us, now is the time. Little plug there for them, free. The server we fell upon was Twisted Nether. There are many factors, but the main reason is the already established raiding community on this realm, as well as being one of the largest realms for Horde. See you in battle for Azeroth. If you're interested in playing part of what we achieve, yada yada yada. Go and contact them. The link's down below to their website and this post. So, and that's what it ultimately comes down to. Now, I know, because people have been following my channel for any time, have known that I've been recruiting this expansion, and not right now, thankfully. It has been, I've found it impossible. And this is not something that I've only just started in Legion and didn't know what to do. I'm not going to be honest, I don't know what to do in terms of recruitment in Legion. I really don't. Previous expansions, I think, in most expansions, I have done recruitment, one guild or another, and I found it relatively straightforward. If you're willing to be active rather than passive and put the effort in and go out and try and find people, I've been able to find some very good applicants. And I've not been able to in Legion. Most of the people, while I was recruitment officer at my previous guild, were applying. Most of the decent players we got actually ended up approaching us rather than me finding them. This is unheard of. I've never come across this situation, really. And it was, there was a number of reasons for that. There's not just one reason. But one thing that time and time again did come around was changing factions. And there's a couple of things there. First of all, there's just the straight up cost. It costs a lot of money to change faction. And because for one character, it costs several months worth of subscription. And I mean quite a few months worth of subscription, nearly half a year. And for Multiple characters, especially more serious raiders, are likely to have a few alts at least. And then, it's just piling up and piling up and piling up. And who wants to spend what could easily be over a year's annual subscription? Of course, it's an annual subscription if it's a year. For just to move a couple of characters, 2 or 3 characters. It's ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. But that's just the cost. Then there's the other side. The much more common thing I used to get was either I don't want to change faction because I've got friends here. Now, usually, when some people say they don't want to move realm because of friends, that all seems a little bit weird to me because you can still play with your friends. You can do anything apart from Mythic raiding with your friends. And you've got Battle.net and all that sort of stuff as well. And Discord, whatever you want to chat with. But when you're changing faction, there is that realistic. You can't, you can't do Mythic Plus with your friends if you change to a different faction. You can't do like normal and heroic runs. You can't do any of that stuff. You can't play with them. And that's absolutely ridiculous. And this now, it's been mismanaged. And I don't understand why Blizzard have not seen it as an issue when there's been such a shift from the midpoint. There's no equilibrium. We're very far away from the equilibrium point. The fact that it's not even been talked about. There was a question that was posed to the development team, and Ian Hazacostas answered basically at BlizzCon saying, you should play whatever faction you like playing. But that's not how it works. An MMO, not only is an MMO a social game, it must be a social game. One of the big criticisms that's levelled at a number of MMOs, WoW included, is that it often ignores the social aspect of the game. In other words, it allows people who join the game as a single player, they don't have friends who play it, to continue as a solitary figure in the game when it's an MMO. And this, it should be fostered. The social side of it should be fostered. And it isn't. And the solution should now be fairly obvious. At the moment, even stronger racials are coming in for the next expansion. To my mind, the racial should never have been a thing. If there were no game-changing racials, then this may never have happened. There might have been a slight imbalance, but not much. 60-40 would be okay. But, we'll never know. We'll never know. It could be other things as well. People could just prefer Horde storylines and characters and stuff like that, in which case maybe they should have worked harder on the Alliance side of it. But I don't think that's the case. I think it started off as a perception about racials. Whether that was true or not is irrelevant. Perceptions are very strong and they're hard to break, especially when you don't even put any effort into breaking them. But it's now just, it's snowballed because, people will, when they're going to move anyway, they'll just say, well, I'll just go Horde. Because even if the guild I joined doesn't work out, I'm much more likely to get into a guild going to this realm with all these Horde guilds than I am to this. Because any realm you pick, even a sizable realm, if it's got Alliance guilds on it, probably doesn't have that many on it. Because as Scrubbuster said there are not that many Alliance guilds, especially at the top. I'm not even just talking at what they would call the top end, the sharp end. It's very few there. It's very red. That's C. But even further down, and you get more Alliance guilds as you move further down, but there's still that imbalance. There's always that imbalance with Horde. So what is the solution at this point? There's nothing you can do to change that. Even if you did get rid of racials, which they're not doing, or at least you only made them cosmetic, then that imbalance will remain because the friends thing, which is the strongest draw, is always going to be an issue now. And then you say to yourself, well, first of all, let's just ask the question, is it important? Does it matter? And the answer is yes. For my money, there are 2 parts to an MMO, okay, or any online role-playing game. There's the PvE and the PvP. And they should always be separate because there will always be players that very much like the PvE but don't want to get involved in PvP. There'll be people who want to do the PvP and don't really want to get involved in much PvE. And there'll be people who want to do a mix of both. And that way, so you've got to split it down the middle. For me, if you are going to make faction affect PvE, you're doing it wrong. You're doing it very wrong because you are stopping people playing the faction they want to play, or you're giving them a choice. Either play the faction you want to play or do without playing with your friends, because that's what it ultimately comes down to, isn't it? That ultimately is what it would come down to. I remember when I started the game, I played Warcraft 1, 2, and 3, but I wasn't that keen on WoW. I'd not played an MMO. I wasn't sure I would like it. Lots of players, all the rest of it. Internet, bad place. But a friend of mine, persuaded me to get it. Said it's really good, and I trusted their judgment. And so, and I actually had a question. I said, "Can you play Paladin?" So I play Paladin, and he said yes. I said, "Okay, I'll get it." Now, let's say he'd have said. Now, fortunately, he was playing a hunter, and he was playing on Alliance because that's where his friends were playing at the time. If he'd have said to me, "Yes, you can, but you wouldn't be able to play with me because I'm a Horde hunter, and Horde don't have Paladins," which they didn't in vanilla, I'm not sure I would have played it. That would have been a different thing, because now all of a sudden it's like, okay, well, to play with him I'd have to play a faction that doesn't have the class on it that I want to play. Luckily that all sort of works out, or luckily or unluckily, depending on your point of view. But that is a really strong draw, being able to play, playing with your friends or choosing the faction. So what do you do about it? Take a leaf out of the games that do it right, in my view. And that is that faction has no bearing, zero bearing at all on PvE. It's all about the PvP. What does that mean in essence? It means play whatever race you like and join whatever guild you like and play with whoever you like. No barriers. But this is World of Warcraft, and the next expansion, Battle for Azeroth, is all about faction v faction. Yeah, war. PvP. For PvP, then you are divided into your ones. All right, you can't necessarily play with your friends in PvP then. Okay, because that should be Horde versus Alliance. And that's why Blizzard should expand their PvP content. Instead of coming up with the same old crap battlegrounds and silly scenarios and arenas, stuff like that, do proper PvP. Put it in the game properly, put some effort into it, and have PvE, zero barriers. Play with whoever you like and whichever faction you like. They work slowly on this. Like, they're already giving us, something's coming out, again with the PvE, PvP, again, because I'm on a PvP server. I've been on PvP servers for several years now, and I complain every time people mess about and gank me in PvP. And people say, well, why are you playing on a PvP server? And the answer is simple. That's where the guilds are. I go where the guilds are. They're on PvP servers. I don't know how that happened. I don't know how it happened that raiding guilds ended up on PvP servers and there's hardly any on PvE servers. I'm not sure how that happened, but it happened. So I didn't choose to go on a PvP server. I chose to join a guild, and it happened to be on a PvP server. Now, it's not a big deal for me because I'm big and nasty and can usually look after myself. But nonetheless, it's still annoying. But we're getting the toggle in now. So we're going to get a toggle in the next patch where, I assume it's the next patch anyway, where you can flick between, you can say, okay, I'm a PvE player. I might be on a PvP realm, but I'm a PvE player. So do you know what? You're not monkeying about with me. You're not ganking me. I'm going to stay out of your way. You stay out of mine. And I can behave as if I'm on a PvE realm. So they're giving us that choice. It's taken long enough, but we're finally getting that choice. But we still don't have the choice to play the faction we want with the people we would like to play with. Unless we all happen to be of the same mind and want to play the same faction. But again, for moving guilds, that is not working. Because at the moment, Horde, massively imbalanced. There is nothing you can do. Nothing you can do with the racials or anything to persuade people to rebalance or anything like that. Because there's, even if people were minded to go, oh, actually, Alliance are looking a lot better now, we should go there. The cost element for most people is prohibitive. So there is nothing you can do other than remove barriers to playing with people based on faction in PvE. For PvP, of course, those barriers should exist and they should be encouraged, and PvP should be encouraged. But for PvE, for raiding, for dungeons, for questing while you're leveling or just questing for whatever other reason, world quests, all that sort of stuff, joining guilds, you should be able to do of any race. It's not even like it doesn't make sense in the lore. Any number of situations in stories and lore where people of Alliance races and Horde races come together. We've got whole factions, reputation areas like Argent Dawn, Earthen Ring, people like that have exponents from it from both sides. We have individuals who befriend Aetrig and Tyrion, for example, all that sort of thing. It's very much in the lore about Alliance and Horde, NPCs, characters, members of the lore getting on with each other. There is no earthly reason why this shouldn't be a thing. And the fact that it's not being a thing just means that for some reason, and because no one's forcibly asking the question of Blizzard, they're not even saying anything about it. And I really don't understand why. But anyway, before I just rant and rant and rant, those are my views anyway. That's what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments below. First of all, do you think there is a problem? If there is a problem, what do you think should be done about it? Do you think there's an alternative thing that could be done about it? Or do you agree with me? Put it all down there. If you've enjoyed the video, give it a like. Subscribe if you haven't already. Thanks very much for watching. Share it with anyone else who you think might be interested as well. And until next time, I'll see you later.